We are looking at a video from Epic History, who we haven't visited in quite a while, and this video is titled 3D Guide How to Build the Perfect Medieval Castle. Now, a very interesting thing about me is that the medieval era used to be my favorite era in history for many years until it got deplaced. Now it's my second favorite. My actual favorite era in history is the Hellenistic age, from Alexander all the way to the last remnants of the Diadochi when Rome took over everything. That period is actually my favorite. But yeah, the previously it was the medieval era, and I feel like the medieval castle is kind of just synonymous. Like the castle as we know it, the word. Obviously, I'm pretty sure castles existed in other eras. Maybe? I'm not sure, a bit iffy on that. But I feel like just when you think of castle, you think of like the medieval era, right? And like to the Renaissance and whatnot. I feel like that word and the image it invokes kind of is synonymous with medieval. And yeah, I really liked a lot of things about the medieval era. Just the aesthetic, kind of like, the knight and the lady. It lends itself so well, I think more than any other era in history, to like fiction. Like fantasy, D&D, games, role-playing. I just feel like the medieval era, more than any other, just lends itself to a lot of like, genres of fiction, and it kind of is like this weird it can easily be romanticized, right? And I had to read several medieval literature back when I used to go to university. So again, there's just a lot to it, to that era, and I really do find it so fascinating. And yeah, the castle in itself, I've seen several castles, kind of like this one, built on like higher places, and I'm really interested in seeing if Epic History is going to cover the different areas that a castle can be built of, like mountains, hills, and what exactly would make a great castle impenetrable. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I'm really looking forward to watching this video. And if you enjoy my thoughts or any of my other videos, I would like to ask you humbly to please like, comment, subscribe, and help support this very small but very humble channel of mine. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than we should get to it, shall we? Without any further ado, let's watch Epic Histories: How to Build the Perfect Medieval Castle.
In Europe's Middle Ages, castles dominated not just warfare, but society itself. Strongholds are as old as war, but the medieval castle was unique. A refuge and a projection of military force, a lordly residence and symbol of power, a centre of justice and government. Today, castle ruins are found from the Atlantic coast to the hills of Syria, dramatic and poignant reminders of a lost feudal world. There was no single blueprint for the castle. Every one was unique.
I think that's also something really cool about the aesthetic. I'm really happy showing these images of these castles. Not gonna lie, if I could just conjure up a home, probably be a castle. I just think the aesthetic's cool. It really lends itself. Just imagine living and walking around a castle. I'd feel like I'd feel like a king. You know? Yeah, I feel like the aesthetic change was necessary. But I think that's something else I find really interesting about it. Just like, yeah, the castles I've seen, I think even like Dracula's castle, as it's called, I looked some images about that. Like, every castle is like its own unique thing, while sharing some similar things. Like, you can always look at a castle, I feel, and like know it's a castle, but they always look different. which is just a cool, unique, like, thing about it, you know?
But by analysing key trends over 4 centuries, Epic History TV is proud to present its guide to building the perfect castle. The medieval castle was the product of a feudal world. A world we'll explore with help from our video sponsor, Crusader Kings 3.
You know, my favorite game that I still play, I don't play video games except this one now. It's called Mount and Blade Warband, and yeah, there are many castles in that game, and it's a kind of like another game that's it's not exactly the medieval era as we know it in our world, it's a fantasy medieval era. Like I said, fantasy just lends itself really well with like, the medieval era lends itself so well to fantasy, but yeah, there are several castles in that game that I really like. I like capturing them. I think Grunwalder Castle is probably the best to fortify, and is basically impenetrable. But yeah, taking it is a complete nightmare from the Rhodoks. Forts are either fortified by nature or by human hand, or by both, which is considered stronger. Natural defenses.
When building a new castle, the first and most important consideration is location. A castle should dominate the landscape, with good views in all directions, so hills are ideal. Steep slopes and river bends can be used to limit approach routes, making the site easier to defend. And for building work, a local source of stone, wood and soil is essential, as transporting these materials over medieval roads is more expensive than the materials themselves. There must also be a secure local source of fresh water and food to sustain the castle's occupants. A reliable starter castle is the Motte and Bailey, popular with the Normans, who built hundreds across England and Wales during the Norman conquest. The motte is a mound, either natural or built by hand, as seen here in the Bayeux Tapestry. It's not just a pile of mud though. These coloured bands are thought to represent alternating layers of stone and clay, which will increase stability. Sometimes they even used stone or timber foundations. A typical motte is 8 meters high and up to 50 meters across. Its top can be defended by a simple wooden palisade and a tower, living quarters for the lord and his entourage, and last refuge in case of attack. An earth ditch and palisade should enclose the bailey to protect important buildings such as a hall, stables, kitchen, stores, and a forge. Timber palisades are vulnerable to fire and rot, so will ideally be replaced by an enclosing stone wall, known as a curtain wall, as soon as possible. This creates the enceinte, or main defensive enclosure. A curtain wall should have crenellations to protect soldiers of the garrison during an attack, as they shoot their bows or crossbows at the enemy. A concealed postern gate, or sally port, can be used during a siege to smuggle messages in and out of the castle, or to launch surprise attacks on the enemy.
Within the fortress ought to be one principal tower, built in the stoutiest manner and fortified as strongly as possible.
In parts of France, such as Anjou and Poitou, castle builders ignored the Motte and Bailey approach and constructed strong stone towers. In French, it's called a donjon, the origin of the word dungeon.
Oh, wow.
In England, it's known as the keep. A keep offers better security and accommodation than a wooden tower. But if you try to build one on top of a motte, its weight will cause it to collapse. Some opt for a compromise, a shell keep, which keeps the motte and replaces its wooden palisade with a circular stone wall. But a truly imposing keep will have to be built from scratch on carefully prepared foundations. A typical early stone keep is rectangular, between 2 and 4 stories high, with walls up to 6 meters thick. Construction might take up to 10 years and cost a fortune.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Like, in terms of the time it takes to build one, I've always heard, whenever I Googled, usually 10 years was the answer I got from websites of how long it took to kind of build something like this, which is very interesting. But yeah, I do like kind of the considerations that need to be taken in order to start constructing stuff like this. You know, between the geography, obviously, that takes a huge precedent. Also, just the length in order to see things, right? Like with these, especially the ones built on hills. And also just the resources that are needed between natural resources that are already kind of serve as great defense, but going hand in hand with man-made defenses would really help to just make these structures as formidable as they did, while at the same time just looking aesthetically cool. You know, it's kind of like the perfect blend of everything, which I really like about these castles.
So large keeps are only built by monarchs and powerful nobles. The biggest keeps have towers at each corner. Within, there might be a hall for meals and entertainment, private apartments, a chapel, and storerooms. A forebuilding creates an impressive and well-guarded entrance, which should be at first floor level, accessed by a wooden staircase which can be removed in case of attack. If the keep has a cellar, this is an ideal space to store extra provisions, not for chaining up prisoners in the dungeons of popular imagination. Early keeps are square or rectangular, but later come in many shapes and sizes. King Philippe Augustus of France was particularly fond of circular keeps. Perhaps the most eye-catching of all is Castel del Monte in southern Italy, built by Emperor Frederick II. Its elaborate polygonal structure reminds us that the perfect castle must be elegant as well as formidable.
Yeah, I do like that, even though I think the main point is practicality, right, and being formidable and defensive, I do like that there is still a bit of, we need to make it still look beautiful. You know, we can't ignore the aesthetics too much, which I really like. Kind of like, I mentioned in the past with armor and stuff, warriors of the past with armors and stuff just looked really cool. Compared nowadays, everything just, camo and, kind of just the same. And again, I understand the practicality, no disrespect to modern soldiers, I understand. But, compared to, older times, just not as cool, armor and the drip of warfare is unfortunately something we have lost as humans. But, yeah, same with this, the aesthetic is just so cool, you know what I mean? Of castle, it's looking beautiful and awe-inspiring while still being, formidable. Towers are to project forward so that when the enemy approaches, they may be wounded by missiles from the towers.
The curtain wall should be strengthened by flanking towers at regular intervals. These project forward from the wall, so archers can shoot at attacking enemies with enfilade fire, or put another way, attackers will come under fire from the wall ahead of them, as well as from towers to the right and left.
Yeah, from many different fronts. You know what's funny? Like I said, I mentioned Mount and Blade Warband because it is kind of my experience with gaming and castles. But the funny thing is, I was actually defending right now, before I started this video, one of my castles, and it kind of had these two things. So while the enemies were trying to get through the front, I stationed my crossbowmen and archers on these wings, and they just shot from the side, really bleeding out a numerically superior foe who was kind of being fumbled into the center. I don't know, like, I definitely understand the practicality. I'm also enjoying these terms, like, you know, of the specific names of even these, I used to call it the pointy stuff, or like, the crown horns. I know it's silly, that's not the appropriate term, as he said, but essentially, like, these parts that pop up that serve as defense. I used to kind of compare it to like a crown, and with like horns like this to serve as defense. Points rather, not horns, but you know what I mean. So yeah.
Square towers offer large amounts of extra space for living quarters and storage. But their corners are a weak point that can be targeted by enemy stone-throwing artillery, such as a trebuchet. So round towers may be a better option. The choice is often one of
Yeah, I do notice that the shapes they use, definitely square and square/rectangle or circular seems to be the popular shape, right? Of areas around.
Taste, fashion, and/or cost. Square towers, round towers, and D-shaped towers were all common across Europe, and many castles feature a mix of types. In some places, it was possible to cut costs by reusing old Roman fortifications, as at Pevensey and Portchester on England's south coast. Here, the Normans simply built a stone keep within the walls of an old Roman shore fort, saving time, labor, and money.
Smart.
Loopholes, or arrow slits, are important additions for any tower or wall segment.
I'm happy he's bringing up the specific names of these stuff, of these areas around the castle, because I had my own little names. I called them like firing holes. the little points, the crown points, like I came up with my own terminology in my head, and now that I'm happy he's bringing them out, so I'm like, okay, I know what they're called now. I may not use them, but I'm happy. I'm happy to be learning about that, you know.
The earliest versions are simple vertical slits, but from the 14th century, more decorative cross shapes are common. In the event of a siege, wooden hoardings, sometimes called brattice work, can be built out over the walls to allow the garrison to rain boiling water and rocks onto the attacking enemy.
All Uber drivers.
Add a barricade before the gate and place it in its entrance a portcullis, which hangs on iron chains and ropes.
The obvious focus for an attack is the castle's main gate, so its defences, known as the gatehouse, must be especially strong. The ideal solution is to add towers on each side of the gateway, to add an outer and inner gate, and at least one, if not several, portcullises. These metal lattice gates can be dropped vertically to trap attackers in a kill zone. The garrison
Yes.
can then use...
Yeah, I've seen this a lot in like fantasy films and stuff about the medieval era. Like these multiple things. So usually they neglect the second one. Usually they always get the first entrance here. But I feel like they never usually after that you just go into the rest of the castle. They usually neglect the second one, which can just serve as like some saw trap, essentially, getting shot on all sides.
Murder holes in the ceiling and walls to finish off the intruders. The main gate can be further protected by a drawbridge over the outer moat or ditch, which can be raised by chains as an enemy approaches. Through the Middle Ages, gatehouses became increasingly powerful, with multiple drawbridges, gates, and portcullises. The approach covered by looming towers, and every wall and ceiling studded with loopholes and murder holes.
Kind of could be its own death trap in a sense, a medieval castle, right? Like almost like medieval Saw, you know? Oh, that's a great concept. Like, you know the Saw movies, but like make it like more medieval. like dress the doll as a jester or something. But yeah, it kind of can be like that, right? Like a death trap in a sense, if you're an enemy trying to get in.
Some of the most formidable gatehouses are found in the castles built by Edward I to subdue Wales in the late 13th century. Such imposing wall defences began to make a massive keep seem superfluous, so many of these castles were built without a keep at all. Our castle is now an imposing fortress, able to withstand a siege of several months, if properly provisioned. But to be considered truly epic, a castle should have a second curtain wall, enclosing an outer bailey, with its own towers and gatehouse. Gatehouses should be positioned at angles to the approach route, so any attacker has to twist and turn, rather than make a direct rush at the gate.
Smart.
Towers and walls should now feature stone machicolations for dropping rocks on the enemy, far more sophisticated than temporary wooden hoardings. The new outer bailey, or ward, allows more buildings to be brought within the castle's defences, not forgetting that a medieval castle is as much a residence as fortification. Perhaps a new, grander hall for entertaining your household and important guests, kitchen gardens, and extra living quarters. The outer ditch or moat can be flooded with water to create an extra layer of defense. A water moat also has decorative value and can be a source of fresh fish. A final flourish, a barbican, an outlying fortification that adds yet another layer of defense to the main entrance. This is now a fine and formidable example of a concentric castle.
Yeah, this is this is like with a castle like this, I feel like just attacking it would be insane. You know, it's a wonder how some castles ever fell through brute force rather than just try to starve them out, because like the thought of attacking this, and especially with all these defensives, is insane. Would feel like suicide to me. But yeah.
Its design will force any attacker to overcome successive layers of strong defense to reach the final refuge, the keep. If properly garrisoned and supplied, a castle like this was virtually impregnable until the age of gunpowder.
Yeah. I'd heard, yeah, definitely gunpowder, especially with artillery, kind of just undid, right? Like, stuff like this, because you can just blast down walls. Yeah.
As we have seen, there was no single blueprint for the medieval castle. Each was built to take advantage of the landscape, to incorporate the latest military thinking, and reflect regional styles and personal taste.
Yeah, all while being formidable and still easily distinguishable. I'm so sorry, but still easily to identify as a castle. Like I said, the architecture is just beautiful. I only ever took one architecture class when I was in university, but I kind of regret not taking more. Obviously, that wasn't like my major, and I needed to do it just to get some, you know, stuff out of the way, G and whatnot. But yeah, like, while we covered more modern architecture, they kind of give me a appreciation towards the art of building and, you know, human creativity and ingenuity, and just seeing this is really impressive. Like I said, if I had to live somewhere, I would definitely have a castle, because, like, that just looks cool.
The most awe-inspiring examples from the castle's golden age include Crac des Chevaliers, the supposedly impregnable crusader fortress of the Knights Hospitaller.
Dang, yeah. Look at that, just so beautiful.
Dover Castle, known as the Key to England. And Malbork Castle, the gigantic brick-built headquarters of the Teutonic Knights.
Dang.
By the 15th century, the castle's role was in steep decline, in part due to the rise of gunpowder weapons, such as cannon, but more fundamentally because the feudal world that gave rise to the castle had fallen away, to be replaced by professionalized armies and centralized royal authority. As the age of powerful feudal lords ended, so too did the age of the castle. Most would ultimately slide into ruin, their military role replaced by artillery forts, their residential role taken over by palaces and stately homes, as the age of the castle gave way to the age of the chateau.
Definitely beautiful, but I'm not gonna lie, I think the castle is just cooler. Personal opinion, but it's sad. But still, 400-year run, not so bad.
Thanks again to our video sponsor, Crusader Kings 3.
Man, if I ever get sponsored, I would wish that, like, Mount & Blade sponsors me, even though I know that those games are already out and old. But, man, I wish that would be, like, my first sponsor if this channel ever does get better, you know? So yeah, guys, this was another great video, and I enjoyed it a lot. And, yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I'll end it right here. It's really cool to have finally learned the names of certain components of castles and just see what made them such great, like, structures. Definitely a little bit sad that they're gone, but I get it. So yeah.